in my experience, oftentimes what you find is that the executive team just may not have experienced it themselves. So it becomes a lower priority. And then, if it's not embedded in the organization and it's not content rich, and there's not a training map, both the micro and macro level, it usually just fizzles out and fails. So the executive team may or may not have had some false starts in the past, but if the organization can't see any tangible value in it, it's very tough to implement. And again, you have to really start slow, and it's a cultural change as much as a business driver.
To add with Kevin, I think that unfortunately, it's usually the first thing cut too. So they want to get out their compliance training or any of the must-haves, or example, harassment or types of courses like that they have to have as a business, rather than thinking of it as a driver where they can continuously develop their team members with other courses, with soft skills, with communication. We hear so many people say that actually recently at the SHRM conference, we had so many people say to us, oh, we have all these things in our training, but what we're lacking, even with our sales team, even with just people that you think would automatically know how to communicate and understand how to have conversations, they don't have that training. So I think, as Kevin said, if the executive team believes in it, it has to be championed from that executive side and trickle down throughout the whole culture of the organization. I think with numbers wise, right now, it would be hard for me to say how successful any of our training has been with our clients, although we do know that rolling out the communication and using like smart profiles, our automation with our training, has helped one of our clients. So meaning that they've decreased in turnover because they've been given the proper tools right as soon as they've been hired. And that is things like orientation, what they need. I think we've discussed before, like they get where they're supposed to take their drug test, where they park for orientation the first day, what they're supposed to wear, all those things that give many team members the jitters, and sometimes they show up and they don't want to even stay through the 8-hour orientation. So we've eliminated some of those admin tasks for the actual HR, let's say, and then given the tools to the team members that are going to their first day. So they've seen some spike in positive reviews for their orientation and their onboarding, and they've seen that communication and training has helped through that. So I see that as a positive. I see that makes them feel more wanted, valued, and ready to start their job.
Certainly from my perspective, I've been blessed to have a number of executive level jobs where you can look at organizations holistically and, from 10,000 feet as well as in the weeds. And a couple come to mind, one of which was fairly recent. Public company that I worked at had a serious issue with turnover and morale. And they did their best through some real sort of low-level surveys to identify the cause. And it really turned out to be two things. One, they just didn't feel connected to the senior management team. And two was there was a complete void of any sort of training or career path. So about the same time they identified that, they hired a new VP of HR who had a really training-centric background. So she was able to convince us, our executive team, that the investment is worthy. And over the next 2 years, really just crushed the turnover rate down to where very, very, very minimal, like normal attrition, as opposed to 30 and 40% in some departments. Ironically, some of those turnover, those higher percentage were in HR. So that person really brought a new sort of mindset. And then senior management bought into it. We leaned in immediately to stuff like LinkedIn Learning, a platform called Namely. And then we encouraged people through other platforms to go out and find stuff that they were interested in, and the company would pay for it. And the next thing you knew, you had these little internal competitions about how many courses did you take last week, or what did you learn this week? And it was so rewarding to stand off to the side and listen to the line employees talk about this, because 12 months before it didn't exist. And, and that obviously, we'll probably talk about that later, really drives ROI and lowers cost.
It is a buzzword, microlearning, and it is misdefined or misconstrued sometimes what it is. For example, we do microlearning. We also do try to get 30 minutes or less in our courses. Microlearning, though, is going to be learning one of those specific smaller steps, let's say an explainer video, perhaps, that's going to be about 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes. And that seems to be our modern attention span these days. So I find microlearning really helps in situations where maybe someone is learning something in the back of the house, like how to use the dishwasher or how to build a certain drink in a restaurant or something like that. Maybe it's even something where it's in facilities or in the safety risk management where they need to remember the steps of first aid or something like that. So I like to think of them as TikTok videos, microlearning, really broken down, digestible, something that someone's attention span can take, they can memorize. It explains quickly, briefly what they need to know for that specific task. It could be a bigger task, but it's great to break it down into, I would say, soft skills training, things like that are going to be a little bit more in depth, leadership training, but you can break down maybe even SMART training or time management or something like that and break it down into a micro learning where we're going to be able to remember that and retain that information better.
It's interesting. I think at this stage of my career, I've watched this thing, the whole concept of learning on balance really changed. And I think back when I was in graduate school, the internet didn't exist. So, you sign up for a new class, you got a thick book, and then you had to just dive into it and get your quiet time and, sit down for 3 hours to get through 4 chapters and write notes and do that. It went from that to here's a 5-minute course that encapsulates that entire book. So my point being, I think that our brains have changed. It's really interesting to watch. I'm kind of a macro econ guy, and we're bombarded with so much information today. It comes at you from every direction. I mean, it's ridiculous. Being an old marketing guy, something like 5-6 million impressions in a week, being a billboard, an advertisement, a radio commercial, the stuff we look, the stuff we see, stuff we read. And now I think we're conditioned to focus in shorter spurts, if you will. And on top of that, some of that's generational, right? I mean, you take people under, say, 30, 35 who have grown up, if you will, or become adults in the TikTok generation, as Desiree mentioned, where everything comes at you in 30 to 90-second bursts. Even in advertising today, if you look on any company's website who's trying to communicate anything, be it a product or a service, you see explainer videos, and the rule is they're never more than 60 seconds because we just won't watch them any longer than that. So, the Wiser platform is built on microlearning concepts. We're really proud of that. It's easily consumable, and we're going to continue down that road.
I also think it's important to be agile, as Kevin always says, with our platform and learning. So because we are working with fast-paced environments, microlearning is a way to not have to pull so many people away into long training hours where you can give someone that training they need, meet them where they're at and when they need it. So maybe they're messing up on something and they need that training right now, right then. This won't take them for hours off of the actual floor that they need to be on. This will give them that information they need. They'll be able to watch it, retain it, and hopefully understand it and apply it right away. So I think that's where it comes in handy too.
From a business case standpoint, and we talk to our clients about this all the time because we sort of lead with the fact that, we can help you measure your return on the training, but you have to establish a baseline. We can't do that for them. And what's the baseline? Well, let's start with turnover, right? I mean, turnover mitigation is the obvious largest benefit to training. When you can provide, and certainly a frontline employer and others, a meaningful and rational path that requires training, and then you give them the training, it's on them to get it done if they want to advance. Not everybody does, and that's fine. But it's pretty easy to say, our turnover in the slot floor was 40% last year. And then if you're smart, you know that it costs X amount of dollars, pick a number, $10,000, $15,000 to turn somebody over, train the new person, onboard them, lose productivity. And if you're lowering that from 30% to 10%, it's an obvious, meaningful measurement that you can calculate, and it's real dollars. So that's what I always lean into first.
I think he's right on with this. I think, I guess a return, an ROI, if you're looking at dollars, is fewer mistakes, more knowledge. Let's say if we're still speaking to the casino and hospitality industry, you're going to see more customer loyalty because they're going to have fewer mistakes learning with this training. So you're going to see more guests coming, more guests sitting at the tables longer. We're launching our table games here soon. I think there's a high turnover with dealers in this, especially in Las Vegas. So I think if they're utilizing learning and development and refresher courses for their table games, they're going to see huge ROI, which, like Kevin said, is real value, real dollars, with guests sitting at the tables longer and playing more hands. And this will be an interesting one that we'll be able to get some hard data from, I think, soon.
Building a pipeline of promotable employees, right? I mean, certainly in casino, if you hire a slot tech, they might want to be a slot tech for their career because that's what they like. But I can tell you in my LinkedIn research, when we're talking to direct managers, directors, and VP of slots, a lot of them started as a slot tech, but they had a path forward that was definable. The training was available to them. They took it upon themselves to initiate. And, over a period of years, sometimes decades, they end up running the place on the slot floor, right? But that one's hard to quantify, although it always defaults back to less turnover, right? So if you have a pipeline of promotable employees, it's always cheaper to promote somebody than it is to hire someone new, period, hard stop. So I really think that's important as well. I think that if you have a baseline of very little to no training in an organization, you have to start slow. And here's why. A couple reasons. Number one, if it's not done properly and installed properly, the people, the rank and file, the member employee body just sees it as another initiative that they know is probably going to die on the vine, right? So they have to do their sexual harassment training once a year, and it's like, they might as well be going to the dentist, right? They just hate it, but they do it. So the way that you structure and deliver a training initiative is really key. And my best advice is to kind of start slow. That's a little counterintuitive, right? But if you just say, hey, we're in the training mode now, here's all this stuff, this content you have to consume. Some very small percentage will immediately engage. Those are overachievers, but the balance will do it out of necessity. And you can't, that's a recipe for disaster. So, my advice is to start slowly and then really have a structured approach, right? Here at Wiser, we're able to develop and create and deliver courses to job specific people and do it in a timed fashion through automation so that there's a path there, and it might be 20 courses, but they see 20 courses. I don't have time to do that. But so let's deliver one a week, right? You do it over 20 weeks. And the other thing it does, the platform allows full accountability between the employee and the manager or senior management. And that in terms of there's visibility, this person was assigned 5 courses to do in 3 weeks. They've only done 1 because we can see it. So the manager says, oh, hey, Joe, how you doing on your courses? And then there's a counseling session. And that over time is a culture shift where we're training, because when you join the company, through your orientation, you're going to talk about training and it's coming. And now it's just a matter of structuring it and delivering it properly.
It's important to have this sort of employee motivation or employee, like Kevin said, accountability. So it can be something, I think Kevin mentioned earlier that it's important that he saw frontline employees becoming almost competitive. Like, I've done this many courses or I've done this many. So, we all kind of feel that way naturally, I think intrinsically, like if we ride our Peloton or if we're at the gym and we see our leaderboard and we get our badges. So at Wiser, we do have that built into the system too. You can do what you want with that, but I think starting out with motivating your team members to want to learn is part of the culture. Kevin's mentioned it several times today. Having that champion that believes in a learning culture is important, and taking it slow, whether it's learning something about the mission and vision of the company through the communication pieces we have, adding that, maybe little tests or questions about, hey, what's our number one pillar or our value, and then getting it to department. So implementing it in a slow, methodical way, like Kevin said, is really important. And we do that with our clients, and it starts to spread, to each department. So I think that be the best way to go about it if I was new to introducing a learning and development platform?
There's so many software platforms that businesses need and they acquire and they buy them. And it's just that, a software platform, right? When in the case of casino and hospitality, our staff and our parent company, we have, I don't even know, but I'll just say hundreds of years of casino operations management experience in our staff. Not only does the platform serve the client well, because of the way it's built based on experience, but we also bring to bear all of our collective team experience as we develop not only the courses, and a great example is the table games courses we're going to be releasing very soon. We've partnered with the foremost authority in the entire world to help us develop this. Then we lean into our own staff members, some of which have 20 years experience as a table games dealer, manager, director. And this all goes into the formula. And then we reduce that down to, as Des was talking about, the bite-sized chunks and the micro learnings, followed with complete accountability. And that's where the magic happens. So we're really excited about that. We know that it matters. It addresses a number of things, not the least of which is turnover. Also has a lot of science behind it in terms of house protection. We're delivering training to the house so that they can actually make more money, right? It's just the way it is. So very proud of that.
Small steps and big changes for companies, I think, when they really take learning and development seriously.